Yes, the member for St. James Central.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to make a very brief contribution to this debate. And as I do so, sir, I want to begin by publicly offering my own condolences to the honourable member for St. James South. I have already spoken to him yesterday, and I shadow the ministry that he carries, Mr. Speaker. He has been a colleague of mine since first form in Harrison College. And I, sir, obviously, if I appear to be unduly empathetic with the other side today, it is because, sir, I am mindful of the circumstance and would not wish to lend further agony. Mr. Speaker, sir, I listened with a certain degree of despondent interest as this debate unfolded. I want to start, sir, by saying that much of that which the learned Attorney General of Barbados just offered to this House is entirely accurate, but perhaps, sir, would have been better offered not in the context of an estimates debate in Parliament, which would be the last one in the life of his administration, but rather would have been better served to have been delivered in Cabinet when policy priorities are being debated and articulated. Mr. Speaker, I use, for example, the matter on which the learned Attorney General closed, the question of the sewage system in Barbados. Now, there are two plants, one on the South Coast and one in Bridgetown. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a matter now of public record that 1.5 years ago, when the plant on the South Coast reached what at that time we thought was a crisis stage, government's response was to belittle the significance and the potential deleterious impact that that situation could have on Barbados. Regrettably, sir, that charge was led by none other than one who is a member of Parliament for one of the constituencies affected in the South, and the other, sir, Minister of Tourism. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, it was on the 28th day of this year that a section of the press carried a statement from an official of the Barbados Water Authority that confirmed the fact of faulty diffusers in the South Coast, and that, according to that official, not according to the Labour Party, that they had not been maintained adequately or at all for a period of at least 7 years. In that same commentary in the press, the same official had attributed to him further comment about the Bridgetown sewage plant, sir, and indicated, sir, that the effluent pumps and electrical systems were on their last legs, and that the unchlorinated effluent with high bacterial content was, according to him, being deposited slightly off of Travers Way. And Mr. Speaker, sir, this is an official of the government of Barbados making a statement in the press, and to the best of my knowledge, information, belief, and indeed recollection, it has not been countered or negated by any technical argument coming out of the same water authority, or indeed coming from the lips of the minister or someone properly authorized by him to refute and rebut those statements that were made. So while the Attorney General is right, the fact of the matter is that what comes across to Barbados and comes across to the opposition is that there are, in fact, circumstances in which there is a dichotomy, a disconnect between the rhetoric in here and the reality out there, Mr. Speaker, sir. And as I say to you, sir, we are in a situation where clearly, just using that example, the sewage system, there's a state of crisis. While the Minister of Finance delivered his budget, Mr. Speaker, the businesses in Fontebelle were closing their doors. It has repercussions on productivity. it has repercussions in public health issues. Mr. Speaker, sir, while the minister was delivering his budget, if you move off of the sewage issue for, well, no, let's not move. I can go and give you another example, sir, because it disturbs me that on the South Coast, on the same day that the budget was being delivered, the sewer in front of Lanterns, across between Lanterns and Tapas, I believe it is, erupted into a 2 or 3 foot fountain of water spraying vehicles. And the report that we heard today on the radio, to which the Attorney General alluded, suggests that there are deeper problems manifesting themselves yet again. Now, I don't believe, and I think the leader of the opposition has made the position of the Labour Party abundantly clear, and I say it on the floor of this House for the record, that if a reasoned, sound, and sensible proposal is put, and could have been put in these estimates even, because clearly these issues predate the estimates, with a view to dealing with the crisis of sewage problems in Barbados as a matter of urgency, the Barbados Labour Party stands shoulder to shoulder with the government as Barbadians wanting to see the solution, sir. That has been her position. It is mine. It is the position of all of our colleagues. But there is a disconnect between the rhetoric of the government bench and the reality of the life that we are leading. As the Minister of Finance spoke, sir, the fact of the matter is that he offered language that suggested that we can be hopeful. But the truth of the matter is that in the constituency of the Honourable Member for St. Thomas, and indeed in mine, on that day, there were parts of our constituencies that were without bus service for 3.5 hours. A matter that also predated the estimate, sir. The truth is that as the Minister of Finance spoke, a young man was being stabbed in his school, a situation of crisis among young people in the schools in Barbados. Technically speaking, sir, it is also a matter of crime, adding one more case to a 10,000 plus situation. But I'm not treating it at that level because all of these predate these estimates. And the point that I think the opposition has been trying to get across to government is that you cannot come here now in the depth of the crisis and say that this is business as usual if the estimates themselves are not specifically targeting solutions that require some financial and capital investment towards bringing a serious challenge to the social side of the problem and indeed the economic side of the problem. But Mr. Speaker, sir, we all know, and none of us can dispute, that it is not going to fall like manna from heaven. The buses that the Minister of Transport and Works so badly needs, he is down to 60 odd, and were he in his seat, I would put it to him, sir, frankly, that it can fall on some days. In fact, it falls a little lower than 60. Not his fault. But the reality is, sir, that if you don't have the foreign exchange, you can't import the buses. I listened to the minister when he spoke this morning. He said that he has buses that are 18 years old and lamented the age of the bus. But the Labour Party has been out of office for 10 years. So it was a relatively new vehicle, 8 years old when we left office, sir. That is a reality. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, if there is a need for change and maintenance or whatever he is calling for, because you did not specify exactly what you wanted, the reality is, Mr. Speaker, sir, it was a requirement that predated these estimates. But like that which the official of the Water Authority pointed us to, there has been a failure to have an adequate maintenance program. And the reason why there's been a failure to have this, and it replicates itself across every sector of government, sir, is that there has been a problem in Barbados with the public finances for 10 years. And we have had plan after plan and policy after policy with respect, Mr. Speaker, sir, and all have failed. That there is now a sustainable, what do you call it, the new plan, recovery plan, is the testimony to that failure. And this is now supposed to be the plan that is going to help us sustain a recovery from all the other failed plans. And this we are asked to believe can be implemented and executed within the life of this government, which really and truly is 3 more months. But when you read the substance of the plan, they make policy proposals, Mr. Speaker, sir, the architects of the plan, for things that had to be done in September of this year, long after a new administration would have had to have come into government, unless the Prime Minister wanted to declare war and have 12 more months, which I don't presume he intends to do. Well, I know you don't intend to do that, Prime Minister, but I'm saying this is the only way under the Constitution of Barbados that September could be relevant to us. And I'm not saying for the benefit of any honourable member, I'm not saying that's the plan of the Prime Minister. I am saying that that is the only constitutionally possible way that you could have more time. And the reality is...
Yes, I remember.
Order. The honourable member is misleading the chamber, because the honourable member knows that, in fact, that even though the plan says Recovery Plan 2018, that in fact that the plan makes projections down to 2021. It's just not, the plan does not say that all of the matters will be addressed within the financial year 2018.
Okay, thanks for the elucidation. I remember, please continue.
So, Mr. Speaker, sir, the point that I'm making is that the requirement that we have is to deal with the shortfall of foreign exchange, first of all, and to get Barbados into a situation where we stop speaking this language that we have taught when it comes to borrowing money and thinking of so many loans that have come before this House, sir. What this House needs is to have a dialogue on how we can get onto a growth plan, a growth platform, and Mr. Speaker, sir, with great respect, the House needed to have been here a long time ago. But you cannot come to that point, sir, if you do not understand, first and foremost, that one of the greatest impediments to this country's growth is, in fact, the red tape imposed on the government, imposed on the country by the government, like a stranglehold, that red tape of bureaucracy, the red tape of regulations. Privately held investment in Barbados, privately held savings in this country, sir, today amount to approximately $8 billion or $9 billion. They can be unlocked. It can be used to the development of this country and the country's well-being. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, I can give you a few examples. Regrettably, the first that comes to my mind is the one with agriculture. Now, the honourable member is not visibly before me, but I want to make the point as it comes to my mind. The country needs to have a National Health and Food Safety Authority with its own laboratory. It is important, sir, because it allows us from a trade offensive perspective, that is, if we wish to penetrate other people's markets via our own produce, so we need to be able to demonstrate that we have a certain quality of export. Now, what is it that we're hoping to export, sir? This country produces ice cream, but cannot export it because the ice cream is a protein-based food. The country has plenty of milk, can't export it. Chicken, can't export it. Eggs, can't export it. I am happy to say, sir, that I am associated, albeit a little bit more distantly these days, with a cheese producer. Can't export, Mr. Speaker, sir. And there are several other proteins that cannot be exported because of the fact that the authority that needs to be created and can only be created by the government of Barbados has not been created, but its failure to have been created means that the opportunity to earn foreign exchange that should be in the hands of ordinary farmers and people associated with the farming industry in this country cannot be earned. Now, who is to correct that problem, sir? It can only be the government. But the government's failure to act, and that has been known since 2008 when the EPA, the Economic Partnership Agreement with Europe, was completed. So we're talking 2008 to 2018, and there has been no change. Now, Mr. Speaker, that can't be good enough. I can go further, sir, and I can move to fisheries. The honourable member for Christchurch South has a coastal constituency. I have a coastal constituency. He knows, as I know, that with coastal constituencies, There's the desire to empower the fishing community. But beyond that, there's a tremendous social benefit that can be found if there's a tremendous amount of economic activity in the coastal constituency. The honourable member's oysters is an example of that. To a much smaller extent, Paynes Bay in my constituency is an example of that. Now, Mr. Speaker, so the reality is this. We have had an offer from the largest market on planet Earth, the European community, to take all the fish that we can sell to them. But we can't sell them any fish, Mr. Speaker, sir, because the sanitary and phytosanitary legislation must be in place in Barbados, and the requirements of transforming our markets to make them enclosed, to make them minimum temperature, to put in the wash-down steel or aluminum tables and basins, and make sure the processing is done at a certain sanitary and phytosanitary level. None of them are in place in any of our markets, not one. But in the Eastern Caribbean, where there is a far smaller fishing fleet, with far less reach, a lot of them are doing coastal fishing. We can go to sea on a boat for 3 days, or 4 days and longer. They cannot. We have a superiority in the marketplace, Mr. Speaker, sir, but they have the market that can allow them. They have the technical advanced market that can allow them to export to Europe, while Barbados still is stuck in the position we were in 1966. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, there comes a time when we have to stop talking the language of transformation and understand that the rhetoric in this political cathedral is becoming irrelevant to the people out there. And in fact, sir, the failure to do some of these things is becoming an albatross around the necks of the people that we are representing. It is a humbug. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I honestly said I just entered this debate to make one or two small points, and those are the real substance of that which I wanted to say. I also want to say, Mr. Speaker, however, as I see the Minister of Housing before me, that he spoke in this debate, and the member for St. Philip North is laughing, so I can direct it to him too, because he's equally culpable. He too spoke in this debate. And they preside, sir, over large statutory corporations, both of which are in substantial amounts of debt. The Minister of Transport Board is about $70 million odd. The National Housing Corporation, $100+ million in debt. Their speeches would not have led you to believe that they know this, but that is the reality, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I would have wanted to hear what are the efficiencies that are being built into the operation of the statutory corporations to make sure that you are managing this debt. Because, Mr. Speaker, sir, what I do know is that even as I stand before you, people in the National Housing Corporation would confirm that for the last year or so, there has not been sufficient money in order to buy the material you need to do maintenance. You've had shortages of material to do maintenance. You have a staff complement, however, Mr. Speaker, sir, that has been increasing. Yes. I stood on the floor of this House last estimates and put it to the Minister that he'd brought in people in the National Housing Corporation from St. Lucie, specifically to do work in the constituency of the member for St. Philip North, where the housing project just above Dodds Parish land had to be redone. And he couldn't challenge me then and cannot challenge me now. And since that time, more staff have come on again. But yet still you're in a situation where we know that in the same statutory corporations, there are people who are waiting 2 weeks and 3 weeks late to get paid. So if you can't pay people punctually and promptly, why are you bringing on more staff? And I want the Honourable Minister of Finance in his wrap-up to give us an idea of what the efficiencies are that he has mandated as we go forward in these corporations. Because it was him, nobody else in this government, and I give him great credit for having the testicular fortitude to say it. What I don't give him credit for is for kicking the can down the road. Since 2010, the Minister of Finance correctly pointed out to the bloated nature of statutory corporations. He called them unwieldy. He said it at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, Mr. Speaker, sir. 2013, he came here and he said that he was going to take a cut, and he did it. 2,500 people went home, sir. But he also said there were further amalgamations and so on to be done. The minister can't tell me one entity that he has amalgamated since 2013. Not one. The Minister of Finance can't tell me one. He can't tell me, Mr. Speaker, sir, what are the mandates that he has handed to the Minister of Public Works so as to make sure that the $75 million in debt is controlled. Not one. He can't tell me, Mr. Speaker, sir, one thing that he has mandated the Minister of Housing to do to ensure that that $100 million in debt is controlled and that you don't keep mulcting transfers and subsidies by bringing on more people, especially now as you creep closer to an inevitable destiny with a date called an election, Mr. Speaker. And it is happening in other corporations. CBC is $100 million in debt too, and more people are being brought on there. So how can you run the shop? How can you run the shop in this wasteful manner when you will not run your own bread cart that way? And Mr. Speaker, sir, the unfortunate thing about this debate, in my view, was that 1 hour and 8 minutes into the debate, the Honourable Minister of Finance had this to say. We know, and I'm quoting him, that the National Terminal Company sale is subject to regulatory approval. We know that after some months of consideration, the FTC issued advice. Because, you know, when you read it in the media, they say the FTC blocked the sale. That's not what the FTC did. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the honourable member is a layman and unlearned in the law, and I forgive him. But, sir, tribunals don't render advice. Counsel renders advice. Tribunals make determinations. Tribunals make findings. They make decisions. They don't give anybody any advice. And I hold in my hand, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to make it a document of the House for the benefit of the Minister of Finance, the BNTCL merger application decision of the Fair Trade Commission. And they say, sir, that at the end of the decision, they say, in light of the foregoing, the Commission has determined that the merger as currently structured presented to it does not qualify to be permitted under Section 20 of the Fair Competition Act. They prohibited it, Mr. Speaker, sir. They go on to say the Commission cannot but decide against this proposed merger transaction. So what advice are we talking about? They don't give any advice. They give decisions. But having given that decision, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want the Honourable Minister of Finance to help me a little bit, because a letter was copied to him along with the Minister responsible for Energy, sir, and also to the Minister responsible for Industry and International Business. And that letter, sir, is dated the 19th of January 2018. I'm prepared to make it a document of the House, and I will tell you where I get it from after this. Right? Re-divestment of Barbados National Terminal Company Limited, BNTCL, by Barbados National Oil Company Limited, BNOCL, to BNTCL Holdings Limited, a member of SOL Group of Companies known as SOL. And Mr. Speaker, sir, it says, to date, we have not received the further information, written confirmation on deliverables as to the following outstanding matters discussed in the meeting of December 6, 2017. 1, confirmation as to the implementation of the moratorium by the government. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Fair Trade Commission, as part of its decision, had this to say about the moratorium. The Commission is of the view that the inclusion of a moratorium is inherently anti-competitive, restricts competition or potential competition, and is contrary to Fair Trade Commission Act. But yet a letter is being directed to the attention of the Minister of Finance, asking for confirmation as to the implementation of the moratorium by the government. It says further, sir, that they want confirmation as to the proposed legislative framework for obtaining future throughput fee increases after the transaction is completed. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Fair Trade Commission's ruling determined as follows with respect to the throughput increases, and I quote, the Commission is of the view that the ownership of the bottleneck facility, along with proposed higher throughput fees charged after merger, may provide a sufficient cushion for SOL to engage in anti-competitive tactics, which could potentially have a negative impact on the consumers. Mr. Speaker, I want this government, sir, not to deal only with rhetoric. Let's deal with the reality as we go forward. If the government is saying that they're going to go behind the Fair Trade Commission and legislate what they wish to legislate in spite of the Commission's protection of consumers in Barbados, as it is authorized in law to do, then the government must just come clean and say, we are turning our back on the Fair Trade Commission and we're going to do what we want to do through Parliament. If that's what the government wants to do, they are entitled to go there. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, don't ask me to believe that all is well and all is completely transparent and above board when the language of that which has been written to the ministers indicates that there is an intention to go behind the back of the Fair Competition Commission in Barbados, which is duly authorized in law to stand in the breach in defense of the interests of the consumers of this country. And they have stood.
On a point of order, please. I didn't want to interrupt the honourable member. You know, he was going very well. He's misleading the House, let me put it that way. Or he's seeking to cast improper motives on the part of the government. The government of Barbados at no time has either said and or acted in such a way as to disturb the ruling of the Fair Trading Commission. It has not done so, and it is not the intention to do so. For the member to therefore suggest that the government is going behind...
Honourable member, he is interpreting things as he sees it, and we can't stop him from doing that. He is interpreting actions as he sees it, and he's entitled to do that. So I can't.
He's also accusing the government of improper motives.
Sir, I don't wish to accuse anybody of anything. I thought I had been very clear, Mr. Speaker, but I will say it again and slowly for the benefit of the honourable member, who has a right to reply in his wrap-up. And I hope he does. I sincerely hope he does, sir, because this causes me tremendous difficulty. I say so because, first of all, as I said, the Fair Trade Commission, in my view, can't offer anybody any advice. They offer a decision. And their decision is patently clear. They have a difficulty with the moratorium, and they blocked the proposed transaction on the basis of that. They have a difficulty with the throughput fee. They blocked it on the basis of that. Thereafter, sir, by the letter I hold in my hand on the 19th of January, it becomes apparent that discussions have taken place between parties in the government. This letter is not a namby-pamby letter. It is written and copied to the Minister responsible for energy, the Minister of Industry and International Business, and the Minister of Finance himself, who has his right to reply. It goes on to indicate, sir, that the BNTCL Holdings Limited is requesting confirmation of the implementation of the moratorium by the government.
I remember you read that already.
Yes, sir.
You read it already.
Yes, sir.
Go on.
Together with draft legislation. And I'm simply saying, sir, if there is a request for draft legislation, it would suggest to me that there's an intention or some discussion about having legislation which would do that which the Fair Trade Commission said should not be done. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, if that is not the case, I am prepared to accept it is not the case. But I'm also saying to this government, sir, that the country now is in a extremely these are the most grievous financial circumstances in our history. We need to be certain about government's intention. And if government's intention is, in fact, to take the step of legislating its way so as to ensure that the transfer of the BNTCL to this particular company is done, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, government has to be mindful of the opposition's position. We can't stop them. But our position unequivocally is that we want to have a Barbados which is characterized by fairness in the marketplace. We know that the competitor holds about 40% of the market share. We know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the competitor has made it clear that they are prepared to share in the holdings of the terminal. We also know, Mr. Speaker, that in Martinique, just across the water, the same two entities share a marine terminal together. We know that in Antigua, the same two entities share an airport terminal together. And what we cannot understand, sir, and what we want to hear from this government is why it is so essential that a monopoly private entity must be created when there are two players in the marketplace, both of whom are experienced, bring tremendous expertise to the business of terminals. The competitor, I don't have to advertise, but I will say it. The competitor has 20 terminals across the Caribbean.
Honourable member, please wind up.
So, Mr. Speaker, sir, in wrapping up this debate, I am saying, sir, that I want, as part of the way forward, whosoever is in control of the administrative direction of this country after the next election, I want us to have a common understanding, a golden thread that runs across the parties in this country, that there is a level of commitment to fairness to the consumer, first of all, and fairness to competitors in the marketplace. If we can't get that right, we will never be able to convince international investors to come to Barbados and spend their money. And we need the foreign exchange investment more than life itself, Mr. Speaker, sir. I am obliged to you.